And a very good afternoon to you from wherever part of the world and the country you are watching us from. Thank you so much for being our continued supporters, even as we bring stories to do with agriculture. Today we want to talk about soil. As I promised on my page, I'm super excited, overjoyed, and I see myself as one of the luckiest people today because I'm having one of our special guests, an associate, John Rasik, who is a soil enthusiast, and he does wonders. If you've watched his videos on YouTube, what he does with the soil, and I'm really honored and humbled to have him joining us to talk about matters to do with soil. This is the Evening Farm Drive. As always, I'm your host, Jackie Moore, and I think we'll just start by introducing John Rasik to our audience for people to know who exactly is John and where are you joining us from this afternoon.
Me and good evening from Adelaide, from Australia.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, John. Who is John? What fascinates you about soil?
Yeah, who am I? Um, well, I always like to present myself as one who spent last something years playing with the dust and the mud all around the globe, 47 countries included, and the dust and the mud. So story continues. Um, Why I'm fascinated with soils? Difficult to say. I was born and I grew up on a small farm, if it's even a farm that was part of ex-Yugoslavia, which later purchased. He was really a skilled man. As for us, that little farm, which was around 5 acres, was a matter of survival for the entire family. And from my early days, I used to go with him and do all these little things on the farm and within my skills. And then he was teaching me how to do well, basically all things on the farms. But my interest was in horticulture. I always loved trees and blossoms and the fruit and yeah, water actually in that part of the world, which is now Croatia. So I'm Croatian, but I was, as I said, from Yugoslavia. And then, anyway, somehow by strange destiny, I ended up on agriculture university and or soil remediation, which in general terms means soil integrated in Novi Sad, which is now Serbia. In the meantime, I was lucky to go with some group of students in, at that time, Soviet Union. And one particular fanatic, one professor, of those professors at uni, with due respect to all of them, see, actually people think. I suppose I realized the source is something much sort of a medium to build residential on them, or dams, or roads, or otherwise, or it's something absolutely much more. You realize how little you actually know, how all of us little know. So, and came to Australia. That was on 10th of August 1986. Yugoslavia. And Didn't speak any English, unfortunately. It was difficult for a while. I was that cap. And so, yeah, after a while, I did it, and then strange destiny brought me to even more strange place, where there was one of the lecturers in soil science that was lecturing. He was lecturing in Toowoomba, that is Queensland, that's eastern part of Australia. The professor on Richmond, and he gave me a chance to go and demonstrate in the School of Engineering laboratory what I can do in terms of soil testing. He was quite impressed, and that opened the door for me. And about 2 years later, on living in Toowoomba, most strange destiny brought me to Adelaide, and that was a time when I came to Adelaide. I think that was 1990 or 90. 89, 8, what, something like that. It was a long time ago. That doesn't mean I'm old. No, no, I'm just young. Anyway, so I joined this company at the time when uh, irrigation developments, all kind of irrigation developments, Australia, but Australian continent, they have a typical tropical soils, and then if we continue another 2.5, 3,000 kilometers down south, then we go into alpine region where we have a snow and across. So there's all sorts of combinations. College. If you want to study soil science, go to Australia, because Australia is definitely outdoor soil museum where you can find soils that used to exist in a dinosaur's time to something really developed into something beyond imagination in modern days. And it's a unique opportunity to learn it. And then at the same time, traveling across that gave me a chance to meet with a huge, diverse, range of people. Think, oh, well, this man is educated. So, yeah, well, education is, to me, is nothing but a ticket, just like a driver's license. But having a ticket or having a driver's license doesn't make you a driver. You become driver with the time. So that can't, most of which have never in their life attended a conference or never wrote some scientific paper, whatever can be called nowadays scientific paper. I have to stop there and say why I'm saying that. I learned a long time ago when I was young researcher a certain reality which is regarding to research. If you copy one author, that's a plagiarism. But if you copy many, that's a research. Well, you see, my teachers that I'm very proud of are most ordinary farmers that have never ever published anything, that never copy their colleagues and terms had a very specific problems. Their grandpas, their fathers, themselves, etc. They tried hard way, and then they find way how to solve their problems, and they did it. They did it. They never, as I said, publicize that. And when you go from farm to farm, there's unbelievable knowledge there, which one can never possibly learn at any university, at any college, cannot find it on internet, cannot find it on scientific papers, yet that knowledge is there. And so I'm a lucky one that I'm traveling around mixing with these people. listening carefully. And here's the thing, they pay me to come and teach them. But I think I'm clever enough to listen what they have to say. And they proudly tell you what problems they have, what they try, what they did, what it didn't work, what it did work. So I actually learn from them. And there's no with them fake information or, adjusted. There's no research, no practicality. And so I always collect some this information, write them in my book or some other things, what they said, what they did. And then imagine I'm going 3,000 kilometers far away in a region where their colleagues, farmers, have a similar problem. And then they say, well, what do you think, John? Click to me. I said, well, that's what I will do, and that's how I will do it. So when it's done, they say, wow, you're very smart, man. Yeah, thanks to your colleague farmers. They said, no, can't be. Well, yes, it is, guys. You are my teachers. And that's actually why I have the greatest respect for them. The books, I'm writing the books. That's fine. I mean, you write books to sell them. But the farmers, when they do their job, they're doing it for different purposes. I said that such a great, you cannot I travel around, why, in my view, my sort of clients are calling, help them. But no, I'm saying that proudly, does not belong to me.
It was very long profile and biography of yourself and what you do. You have so much knowledge, and I think everything that you say has wisdom, contains wisdom in it. And one thing that I've taken up from that introduction is on you cannot have a having a driver's license does not make you a driver. Like, you need to keep driving for you to become a good driver. And for the benefit of our audience, John Rasik does research on the various soils in around the world. And I just want us to play a video, or one of the videos done by John, for people to understand exactly what you do. We'll do a video. We'll play that video on soil, on that. How people view soil. Should Many people think soil is dirt. So there's that video by John, and then we'll get into the interview.
The Australian grain belt spans across around 1.5 million hectares and produces on average 25 million tons of wheat grain per annum, essentially on soils that are not high in nutrients.
Now, in spite of that, Australia exports between 65 and 75% of its national production to more than 50 countries, which is great, given the current situation with the grain shortage and global food crisis. We know that our soils are old and fragile, but we treat them with respect, and in return they produce our food, provide a shelter, and surround us with the beauty and joy. But we use them and not abuse them. To me, soil is not a dirt. No, it is a holy mother to all forms of life that we know of. But
Soil's right, and soil should not be looked at that. What inspired you to do that video, even as we begin this interview, and also tell us What is soil? Because myself, I've been just viewing the soil from the surface. But what exactly is soil? We can start by what inspired you to do that video.
Actually, almost all of these videos, my connections from medias, they say, well, can you please put something for us, this and that? And when I have a couple of hundred similar requests, because I've got plenty of material, collected from all around the world, then I'm trying to compose it in a way to answer their questions. Not because I'm smarter than them, but because, as I said, I'm privileged to travel around to see what not they cannot see, to touch, document it, and then present it. Because I believe that share it with others that can be tested if it really works or it doesn't work, and that's actually why I do it.
And what exactly is soil? Tell us, you've been traveling around the world, you've seen different types of soils. How many soils do we even have in the world?
According to some accounts, we have identified just over 100,000 different soil types.
What?
But in my view, we scratched the surface only, and that's the reality. So, for younger generation, there's unbelievable lot of work to be done to, really map it and know it, what we're dealing with. And when I say we identified those soil types, let's face it, Africa is continent large mapped, largely on, here and there soil pit, here and there soil pit, and in between could be anything. So, but that applies to many other countries. Countries like the US, like Canada, like Australia, Germany, I suppose, few other of those Western countries may may say that they have reasonably accurate soil maps on a smaller scale or whatever, but not on a large scale. Large scale means very intense. It can be confusing what is large, what is small scale. But let's say one pit here to check what's below ground, and then 10 kilometers, 50 kilometers that way somewhere, and then you find something different. But in between those two testing sites could be anything. But at least something is better than a nothing, than no information. So that's why I'm saying that we hardly scratched even the surface to say how many soil types is there. Who knows? At this stage, nobody knows, starting with me. But your second question, what is a soil? I don't believe that anybody has definition, neither do I. And why is that? You see, the soil has a different meaning to different people. If I'm agriculturist, I will be interested to know, what kind of crops I can grow, how that can be profitable to me, what kind of drainage, pH, fertility, and so on. And in particular, should I plant this kind of crops or these kind of crops or these kind of crops, how to cultivate them, how to get the best things in return while preserving my land for next growing. All what I will be interested is, let's say, engineer who is building the robot building, how does that soil behave under either, dynamic load, which are probably, because I'm also chartered civil engineer, whatever that means, we custom, for us, that's a topsoil. And we're looking for some stable layer which will hold our building without cracking, without that. Point. As a total, say those in the partial, or take a military. People very often forget that military are huge land users when they have their exercise or whatever, and these guys are not interested, you know, whether crops will grow or something else. They're interested not to lose their expensive vehicles and equipment when they're traveling across. So they have a totally different interest. And we can go on and on and on and on. Yeah, if you're looking for someone who's building a large dam for things in a catchment area and how to catch up as much water as possible. And anybody can give a complete and full definition what is soil. Different people, different, totally, actually, totally different meaning depends on your users, intended users. That's what soil is.
Very interesting. Before when we get into this topic of soil, how do we link now the current effects you're experiencing across the world of climate change, and how do we link whatever is happening underneath the ground and on top of our soils? How do we link it to the current effects of climate change?
One thing is good that finally humans, irresponsible as we are, but we are having keep polluting. We want to join club, as I said, to dinosaurs and similar guys that have been extincted. The difference is these guys didn't have a chance because, according to some theories, meteor or whatever hit the ground and they're gone. But we are digging the way that we're going. Unfortunately, we're digging our own grave unless we wake up and press the brake and start thinking, appreciating things differently. Now, something that is interesting is that suddenly, in the last couple of years, for whatever reason, out of nowhere, there's millions of experts, uh, experts in the soils, experts in the climate, experts in the environment. Well, by all means, all of us are the best things in life. They are for free, but we don't appreciate them. We destroy them. Uh, and then when you're listening some of those smooth talkers, you think, wow, these guys have solution. The reality is, it is much to sounds well wonderful and easy. It's much easier to say than do it. If we press the brake and try things now, the reality is in many things undo, but that work doesn't exist. Admit to reverse certain process. Going into the climate or whatever expert in the climate at all, I have a little knowledge about the soils. The way I see that, particularly younger generation, that is with all of those little buttons, digital technology, remote technology, etc., etc. And I like to tell them, well, guys, that's all fine, that's all beautiful, but you can't be a boxer, sitting here and then boxing with someone on different continent or different room. No, you have to put the gloves on and go into the ring. Or, if you want to if you want to swim, there is only one way, and that is jump into the water. In other words, reality is, if you want to know soils, you should not use topography and the soil, because soil starts from the surface down, not from the surface up. And unless you can measure it, and the only way to measure it, properly measure it, what needs to measure it, to dig Unless you measure it, you don't have information. You know nothing about it. Without measurements, your decisions are made and your actions are made on a guesswork. That's what they're based on, the guesswork and speculation, but not on measurements and observations. And so, therefore, no wonder that almost all of those suddenly emerging fantastic theories failing apart. They have no basis. They have no basis to succeed. So, as I said, if you want to learn to swim, there is only jump into the water. If you want to learn about the soils, you must respect Mother Nature. You must learn soil language. And once when you learn soil language, which is universal, you will realize so just like an open book, which is written since the beginning of time these days, written by nature, by God, what you believe in, will not hide anything from you. It is just opposite. Will teach you much more than it, and it's amazing what story it can tell you. That's the way that I see.
Well, well said there. We want to play another video that you did on soil remediation, and so that you can understand why it is important, why soils are important, and what are the components contained in soil, and the various soil profiles that we have in the world as we continue with the interview.
Hi guys. In some areas of this farm, canola didn't perform well, regardless of technical inputs being basically the same across the whole area. So we knew we have a soil problem, but we didn't know what kind of problem. And so we said, why don't we dig some pits to see what's hiding below our feet? And then we found a densipan at around 40 to 50 centimeters depth, but the densipan was going something like that, wavy over larger, sort of longer distance, and it had a very thin, 1 to hardly 2 millimeters thick sandy cup on top of it, and that's what was causing intermittent waterlogging in those bed areas. And we then selected this tool with the parabolic curve ripper with the wings attached to the bottom with a particular inclination, because densipan was a little bit varying in depth in some areas. So we could change the ripping angle, lifting angle of the soil, etc., etc. And we destroyed the pan. But essentially we did it before this winter rain. And results are what you see around me.
The components of soil, and we are learning a lot from this interview. Tell us a little bit about remediation, and why is it, how it affects, how soil profiles affect the development of our crops and our food systems.
Good. Don't know why, but somehow there is kind of option among many people when it comes to soil, and they generally get the idea. Well, all what I need is reaping, deep reaping, throw some fertilizers, and then if it's climate okay, I will have a good crop. That's simple. So And that's why often farmers with the greatest effort, fail and then ask them, why doing, why this farm on my land is performing, that one it doesn't, or why is succeeding, I'm failing, what he knows, what I don't know, and so on and so on. Well, as I said, it's not that simple. The first thing, crops that we're growing in agriculture naturally evolved over years, God knows how long. They evolved under those conditions. And if you presume that you know what's below your feet while you don't know, and then for whatever reason you put up wrong crop, it is very unrealistic to expect a good results. You can't. It's just wrong medicine. Um, so the same was with this farmer where I was over there. He certainly a well experienced farmer, but some large part of western part of his farm didn't perform well. And I remember, being in a pub with after I did some job for someone else drinking. He said, "John, I have this problem. What do you think?" I said, "Mate, you can't go to a car mechanic and clip your bonnet closed and ask him what's wrong with the car. The first thing he will tell you, let me open up the bonnet, let me see what it is. Let me identify the problem. Then I know what to do." The same is looking the soil. Ideally, in one dream world, which I suppose will happen one day, probably after I go somewhere else, on a long holiday, it will happen that every farmer will somehow dig that magic pit or few pits on his farm to really see what's hiding below their feet, to see if some parts of their land have maybe one or two, none or whatever, but let's say one or more layers that can interfere with the roots and the water, the oxygen, and entire system how it's functioning. And if it is a such layer, which is, let's say, unfavorable, impeding layer, what that layer is made of, how thick, how deep it is, can that layer be altered with the current technology? And then if it can, how much it costs, what it will take to do it, and if you can modify that layer, it's not just like a pipe. It could be toxic layer, God knows what variations. Virtually, there's endless variations. But the main point is identify what is a problem of your land. Because, like in medicine, if you have a problem, then you don't waste time that way, then you focus on the problem. And in the soil, there's nothing that we cannot fix. The question is how much it costs, how long it will take. Will that layer, whatever occur in the time, and what will be the outcome of that fixing? And in reality, again, is if I spend the money on it, because that's economy, which cannot be ignored, will I ever get my money back? So we can fix up everything, virtually everything, but at what cost? That is the game. But more expensive than that is when you think you know what you're doing because you presume, but you don't have the client, and that's what's in agriculture with the soils in particular. And so when we go for years and years and years, and then we analyze, but you presume this is the right way to do it, well, actually, it's not because you don't know what's under your feet. Well, unfortunately, when we go too far, it is a very, very unrealistic expecting, with some magic to fix up everything and put it where it used to be. It's not like that. That's the problem.
Interesting pointers there. You've mentioned that there's a urgent need for people to understand what is beneath our feet, and that brings me to the question, even from the video we've just shown, is what causes soil pans, and because soil pans can have devastating effects on crops and people's income. What causes soil puns, and how can humans get rid of puns?
We than 100 pounds. Somebody can argue even more than that, and I will never argue. Actually, it's probably much more than that because we didn't identify them all. So, therefore, different mechanisms under different circumstances means rain, snow, topography, drainage, and so on and so on. Different pans have been created under different circumstances from underneath, some come from up, some just develop. There's virtually endless variation. And to say this mechanism, that one. And once when you understand which pine, because pines, those that we know of, are pretty well explained and understood. Once when, but if you use wrong, oh, we can end up in a very messy situation, which is not easy to reverse. To give you some idea, I've seen people ripping a gypsum pan, which is almost like a rock, but like a glass. And then they break it. Oh, yeah, machinery can break it. And then they started irrigating, and what they didn't count on that mixing that of fragments of that layer with the soil, which was not solid, because gypsum is solid by itself. They made a good soil above the pan, they make it bad. And I can guarantee in my life that in a day lifetime and their sons and daughters' lifetime, they will not reverse it. Well, you see, this is why it's one of many reasons why it's terribly important, first of all, dig, identify what is under your feet. If you have a pan or any kind of repeating layer, what kind of layer is? Where is it? As I say, how thick, how deep? Can we fix it? Should we do it or just leave it? Because sometimes it doesn't make any sense to touch it. We can only make it worse than it is. That's just nature. Even though I said everything can be fixed, yes, it can be fixed, but at what cost? That look at that one that I'm just looking over there. I was following a road cut. I was driving somewhere far away from Adelaide, and it was new, fresh road cut. And I said, "Wow, what a wonderful!" Somewhere
I'm
you
still
have a two or
astonished
three or even
by myself.
five layers.
I didn't even know such things exist. And that
Oh,
brings me to
yes,
the
they do.
question of then, what do crops really need for them to grow? Because if we have other things underneath the surface, which part of the soil do crops grow well in, and what is the work of those plants? What is the work of the things that are underneath the surface?
What I'm concerned, what I have learned, seen, and observed, and not just me, exclusive of three crops such as oranges, citrus, almonds, but okay if you have a regular water supply and soil which is reasonably okay, not too acid, not too alkaline, not so reasonable. If you give them a 60 centimeters of depth of volume, given that the soil reasonably balanced, good, etc. Ideal soil doesn't exist, it cannot exist, just in our mind. Because, for instance, soil which is good for that kind of crop could be equally bad for that kind of crop. You can't grow rice in a gravel, whereas if you put crops which don't like wet feet, you put them in rice paddock, they will die. So you can't that one and that one at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. So tree crops such as orchards and so on, they need a deeper root system, but one has to be careful over there as well. Nevertheless, give them 1 meter depth. which is free of toxins, nasty salts, which is reasonably drained and aerated. The roots can penetrate, function normally. And of course, if there is water, you can grow three crops of any kind you like. What I'm concerned, of course, given the climate, so the climate is the last thing that we can change. But with focusing on the soil, so you can grow whatever you want over there. Nevertheless, uh, it's not that simple even for tree crops or row crops or whatever. If you take vines, and you're talking, for instance, about table grape, the deeper and better the soil, higher the tonnage, fantastic. You're doing a good job. But if you go into grapevines, the deeper the soil, the worse the quality because you can't control vegetative growth. And then you go into paradox that the worst possible soil, in a way, but that must be free of toxins because uh, plants or roots, they don't chew on soil, they drink, they drink a cocktail. Like, imagine that you got a glass of water, so if you put salt in it, you can't see it, yeah, but you drink it, you can feel it. So if you put sugar, it will be sweet. If you put, sorry, it will be sweet. If you put, I don't know, vitamins or whatever. So whatever is dissolved, that's what you drink. That's what your body absorbs. Same is with the crops. They don't chew, they drink. And so, if you give them too much, you create too much vegetative growth, and your grapevines come to nothing. Nobody's interested because it produces bad quality. Or as viticulturists say, good wine is made in a vineyard, not in a winery, because once when they bring fruit in, if it's not good, there's nothing you can do about it. And now paradox is it's a tree crop, but it's a very comparing to other crops needs the worst soil. Why? Because you can stress it at any time you like to make sure that it's producing sugar and therefore small tonnage and high quality instead of other, vice versa. On the other hand, you'd go for table grape, totally different story. I need a deep soil, I need a rich soil, I need a plenty of water. So nothing is as simple as it looks like. And if you focus on that, if you try and harmonize your crop requirements with your soil requirements, the first thing to do is to understand ground below your feet. Why? Because this is your production line below your feet, what you don't see. Roots are, if we are what we eat, the crops, plants are the same. They are what they. And if you don't know what they're starting, because when we eat, oh, I will eat that. I'm not going to eat that. It's not good for me yet. But plants can't distinguish that. They suck up what's available. And so, if you don't know what they're using, how do you expect to get the best results? How do you know what to give them in terms of fertilizer, in terms of water? How do you know what they extract? You don't. What is the limit of your land? What is going to be the best return to you? And more importantly, how to manage your land to make sure that next crop and next crop and next crop also give you good results and you're preserving your land. That's how it is.
Very interesting. When you started the interview, you mentioned that our soils are getting old, and it's about time that we started treating them well. And now you've mentioned the part of the pans and soil pans, and the issue about we are what we eat at the end of the day. The theme for this year's Soil Day was soil where food begins. Now, having researched various soils, what would you say is the state of our soils? Because we are getting to learn a lot. I'm assuming most of the farmers use pesticides and herbicides on their farms. And the moment they place it on top of their soils, they usually go deep under into the pans. So, having researched and gone to various parts of the world, what would you say is the state of the soils around, and what should humans do to restore the quality and health of our soils?
I, I half of that. I'm sorry, the reception is not good. Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Hello?
Can you hear me, John?
Now I can,
Can you hear
yes, I
me?
can hear
Okay, I was asking the theme for the soil this year's Soil Day, World Soil Day was food. Soil is where food begins, and you having gone through various different types of soils, having dug deeper into most of the soils, what would you say is the state of our soils? Because most of the farmers, I assume, use pesticides and herbicides, and most of it, when it is placed on top of the soil, it goes under deep into those pans. What would you say is the state of the soil in the world, and what should humans do to restore the quality and health of our soils?
you. Wow. State of our soils on a global scale is well known. There's no much sort of, no need to play politics or whatever, or put sort of, rosy garden picture, whatever. No, it's not like that. It's just the opposite. Most soils in the world are on the brink of collapse. That's the fact of life. That's why suddenly all of those movements to save soils and so on. We, I'm extremely confident to say that that is a very, very, very fair and accurate estimate that we have 50 to 60 maximum harvests before then soil collapse and before then we find ourselves in deep trouble. You know what I mean? Uh, to give you some example why I'm saying when this is totally independent body, this is not just to do some sort of commercial or whatever to scare people, scare mongering. No, 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 no. If you compare nutritional value of one orange that has used to be produced, average orange that used to be produced in the 50s and 60s years of the last century, then it is alarming to know that these days we need about 25 plus or more than oranges to equalize the nutritional value of just one orange that used to be produced in 50s and 60s. So can you imagine how much our soils are depleted from nutrients? Don't even mention the physical degradation in the various forms. Don't even mention pollution with those chemicals and pesticides, fungicides, chemical residue of any kind. And people say, we cannot live with them. You know what? That's rubbish. Because first herbicide has been introduced in France the beginning somewhere of the 20th century, a little bit over 19th century, whatever, sorry. Um, till about basically after Second World War, they start experimenting with, they were doing it before, but first successful experiment with what they call at that time hybrid, which is these days known what we call genetically modified food, which is the same, it's just different terms. That was Russian wheat called was the first one successful that they had 11 sorts. And that was a revolution. You know, suddenly large, huge kind of a yields and so on and so on. And but then we realized that they quickly taking nutrients from the soil, so that had to be somehow replenished. And then they speed up application of all sorts of fertilizers, and then invasion, and then we came with the chemicals, and that lost the control. Similar in a way, like antibiotics, they're fantastic if you use them right way, they work. But unfortunately, we abuse them. Same happened with the soils. All available chemicals we using them in abusive way, and they are in the water. And if you think that the roots are sucking up water solutions, well, these chemicals are there, they didn't go anyway. Well, our food doesn't have that nutritional value. We've done it bad. So is it going to be so easy to reverse it and fix it and get rid of these things? Ah, ah, ah. That's a story for kids. It's not going to be easy. I am very often not say that way. I don't care if you don't want my opinion based on the facts and measurements which are often not published. Well, then don't ask me for it. But there's the reality. Are we going to get rid of that easy? Absolutely. Can we reverse souls quickly to pre sort of a counter revolution era? Not a lifetime. Absolutely unrealistic dreaming. That, no, it will take much more than that. The only way to do that is to increase global awareness by the people about the reality that we're finding ourselves, so that we say, well, look, if we don't want to join to the club of dinosaurs, we better press the brake while we can, slow down, and let's put the behave responsibly, and you know try push back as much as we can. But one thing is for sure, it's much easier to break it than to make it. Well, the same applies to soils, whether you like it or not. Big boys, big girls, we know that. That's reality. So if you want to be a big, that's how it is. Uh, what would be the for my not advice, but just suggestion to land users? Farmers are not the only land users. There are foresters are land users, pasture garden, miners. You see, there are many land. Everyone is land user in its own way. Guys, this is our planet that belongs to all of us. This planet was here long before us, has many species going getting extincted. They never come back. But these species, according to our knowledge, they didn't destroy themselves. Something else happened. We are doing silly, irresponsible thing to destroy ourselves. And so there will be no one to blame if we choose that path. The way that we're going is certainly not the wise way. But people also can make awareness. We still have a capacity. Knowledge is certainly there. Is it willingness there? All other parameters, that's a different matter. To stop it, first of all, slow, and then, well, they are. Will that be easy? No, categorically no. Is there a silver bullet, magic formula? Press the button, undo? No, that's a dream. So, what's the way to recovery? Long, painful, very expensive. It's our choice. But instead of doing it silly way on presumptions, no, see it, measure it, understand it, then act accordingly, and not, you know, well, look, oh, my grandpa has this farm, my father has this farm, I grew up on this farm. That's all fine. Yes, indeed, you can go with your closed eyes across your farm and you can't find the fences, etc. But that's what you know from the surface. But if you never dig a soul pit to see what's below your feet, with the due respect, you have no idea what you really what you're dealing with. And scratching top 15, 20 centimeters when you're cultivating, well, that's a part of surface layer, or maybe a surface layer, but that's not necessarily entire story at all. And then we in our desire and all hard work continue repeating same mistake because we think we're doing right thing. Well, it will be much wiser to really know what you have and I I just can't imagine how many farmers I've been in touch that all of them react. Oh wow! Look at that! Oh, first time when they dig pits on their farms. So to me, it's just like a I don't know when you go to the doctor. I suppose nobody should know me better than myself because ever since I can remember, I've been myself 24. But when something doesn't function, when something doesn't work, I go to see total stranger, call a doctor to tell me what's wrong and to fix a problem. Isn't that funny? And that stranger saw me maybe for the first time in my life and his life as well. Well, same is here. Um, my message to find someone to help you to understand your ground and then you will master it. Then you will see it in a totally different eyes, in a different light. And your approach to entire farming, to your management will be different. You will become your master, the best. That's the way.
Well put there, John. You made me laugh when you're saying that you know yourself all the time, and when you get sick, you have to go see a stranger to help you out. But very nice insights there
But
for the
it's
farmers.
true.
They need to know exactly what is underneath their ground for them even to decide which kind of crop to grow or which kind of livestock to keep. I have just one question. Have you ever tried to write a movie? Like, everything you're saying is just coming out as a thriller movie that someone can watch.
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
I was asking, have you ever thought of doing a movie, like writing or just shooting a movie on our soils? Because from the conversation you're having, it's more of a thriller movie that someone can watch and follow for days. Can you hear me?
I lost
Can you
you
hear
at
me
the
now?
word the movie.
Yes. Okay, there's a saying that I saw somewhere that a single spoon of the soil has millions of living organisms in it. What is the role of these organisms, and why is it important for it to be in our soils? Can you hear me?
If I understand the question, yeah, I lost you half of it, but correct me. If I understood you correctly, the information which you mentioned about living organisms, it is in the soils in a teaspoon, basically, roughly teaspoon. Well, it's not all. Under some conditions, we may have between to 10 billion bacteria alone. It's just it's an unbelievable world. It's just attention how complex a living world underneath and the war where they're killing each other, eating each. But that's a part of ecosystem. Can be there. Um, to have thing like that, that active life, if you like, in a soil, that is possible under certain condition, but not under all condition. And we have to be clear with that. When is it too cold? There's no microbiological or no biological activity. These organisms are not there. Then, if we go on the other side of extreme climate, where there's also plenty of rain, such as Amazonian forest, and so on, there's plenty of moisture. There's many of these organisms, but they are oscillating kind of up and down in number, unbelievable, because more you produce of that organic matter on which they thrive, that they feed, more they use it, less you have it. And then, surprise, surprise, you go into tropical soils, and then you've got surprisingly low organic matter in those soils. People will, on contrary, expect because everything is growing all year. high temperature, plenty of moisture. It, it should be crazy. It should be low quality. But that's why actually we cannot have organic matter because it's used. It's too many of them having fiesta. And so where you can have it, you can have it in an area you have a profound summer, hot summer, and a cold winter, 5 or 6 months in a winter. There's no activity. It's too cold. It's freezing. Nothing is happening. That's where we can talk about these. What with some people dreaming 3 to 6% or whatever organic matter in the soil. In a very limited actually areas, elsewhere you don't have it. And so therefore, using that concept and try to apply it, nonsense. One size doesn't fit all. Because as soon as we go in a tropical or hot areas, where you have either rain or if no rain, then we can produce, but we cannot dream about that organic matter. Reason which I say, more you produce it, more it's used. So therefore, there's no organic matter there. Actually, it's a very little. Well, that's where we have to use brain different way. We have to understand how system here works versus that one. And the method that applies there, it doesn't work here at all. Different strategies needed. So we can use these also and produce food. Most of Africa into those criteria, yeah, and can produce food. But dreaming about those 3 or 6% of organic matter, it just doesn't apply. Cannot apply for these reasons. So what we need, guys, from a cooler and take that technology into, for instance, African continent. It doesn't work. That's very unrealistic. Africans have to find, for example, the oven way that fits today's climate, today's soils, today's needs. Is that possible? Of course it is. Of course it is. When you compare them with the, let's say, farmers from cold region like from Europe, Europeans today for thousands of years tried sorts of things, succeeding, failing, and even there's a huge diversity where the same method doesn't apply. But whatever they adopted until now, it's working. Yeah, it's working to that environment. But when you take it, that system, that methodology, which does work over there, you bring it, let's say, in different climates. No, it doesn't work for millions of reasons. So I'm always saying to my colleagues, my friends, my clients in Africa, don't copy them. No, no. We must use here the system that suits to your country, to your particular soils. That's what you have to do. The rest is just medicine. It's just like a going somewhere in pharmacy. Go to pharmacist and say, I'm sick. Oh, well, where's your, give capsule, this capsule or whatever. Oh, no, 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 these tablets, mate. You can't be allergic, it can kill you. We need to know, we need to understand your specific needs and then tailor medicine to suit your specific needs, particular one. Well, the same applies to agriculture. We need to understand, apart from your climate, your soil, your soil. And then I made the management everything else that suits you. That's the guaranteed success. That's where you will not fail. Otherwise, copy and paste. Well, I'm sorry, guys. It doesn't work.
Well said there. This has been a very interesting interview. We've got to learn a lot from you, John. Thank you so much for making
Oh,
time to join us. And many people are commenting and asking where can they find you if they need more knowledge regarding our soils and soil profiles and soil health.
I'm really, I appreciate it and I'm grateful. Let me just first of all disappoint them and tell them in full honesty. Remember what I said initially. My teachers are farmers, not the books, not universities. And mixing with them, I realized long, long ago when I was young that only God and fools know everything. Well, I'm not a fool, and I don't want to mention another one, so I'm always learning. But within that knowledge, which I guess accumulated from other farmers, I'm more than happy to share with the people when appropriate. They can contact me through you. You've got my details. I'll be more than happy to help within my limited capacity. As a matter of fact, my dream is to go in many of those countries and train local people that are interested, a local brain, and not, certainly not short with local brains. Just give them a chance. It's amazing what they can do. Just unreal. And so instead of, in my view, instead of spending money and send them to countries like my own country, Australia or America or Europe, doesn't matter, to study soils. Oh yeah, you will get fantastic, the best of the best available theoretical knowledge. But you have to be realistic. We are not teaching at European universities. Tropical soils, tropical climate have no much meaning to them. So so what they will teach you, they will teach you about their soils, about their climates, which is wrong. But when you bring that back to Africa, as I was just talking about it, well, I'm sorry, that doesn't apply. So idealized case will be no, bring expertise or experts if you don't have them in your own countries. People with proven expertise and knowledge in your to train you, to uplift you on a higher level, to understand your land, your environment, your soils, so that you become your own independent master who will decide how to do, what to do, how to manage your land, which is the best way to preserve it. That is in interest of your own country, not someone else. Well, that is my view. And I actually feel myself blessed when I, from time to time, do these things and go and train their people. It's amazing after 4 or 5 years, these guys, after, as I said, they get the ticket and only practical experience. Then they train someone else. And that's the power. That of course, that in my view, in the first place, should include farmers. They are real soldiers on the front. So what's the point train someone who's sitting in the office and nothing? No, 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 no. Bring real soldier because they are in a battlefield, and let them to put your preaching, if you like, and teaching into practice to see whether it works. Or that it's nothing more than but the music without the sound. That's how how I call it.
Well said there. And when are you coming to Africa? We really need experts like you to come and train us on our soils and just to check out how our soils are, where we're at. And yes, probably when are you coming? When are you visiting Africa? Or have you ever visited Africa to come to Kenya to be precise?
Let me surprise you a bit. I was twice in Kenya already. I'm glad. Well, when is my next project in Kenya? I'll be glad to visit you and so on. Or if some of these, I will make myself available. But you guys, I'm not telling you something. The few countries, I'm not going to mention which one, just a few countries in Africa have the potential not only feed themselves, feed and why that didn't happen and why it's not happening is not up to me to discuss it. But to say that they don't have a potential, ha ha ha. We can only dream. The rest of the world can only dream about the potential that Africa has. But and the beauty is, you have not the population which is not spoiled and they want to prove itself, want to do something logically. What else young people want to do but prove themselves? And then on top of that, you've got huge unutilized areas, which food hub of the entire world. Am I the first one saying that? Absolutely not. Oh, definitely no. So these are the known facts. Why that is not happening? But is it potential over there? Much more than most of you can dream.
Well said there. Thank you so much, John, for the insights you've shared with us. I'll be looking up. I'll be looking for you more often to discuss more issues regarding soil, especially the region where I'm at. It's in Kajiado. It's one of the areas that has been worst hit by droughts. We need to understand what is the cause of drought and how can we resolve such kinds of shock. So I'll be looking up for you more often to give us insights and to continue sharing your videos with us so that we can also show it to the world what exactly is happening beneath our surfaces.
I didn't understand how it was bad reception, but I get it. So let me thank you. I I know that's a bit huge, if you like, and those questions will apologize if I missed it, but that's the way it is. Either way, thank you very much. It was my pleasure, and yeah, I'm looking forward to continue that cooperation. Why not? As I said, uh, knowledge is whatever you call it, it's meaningless unless it's done and tested in practice. That's how I see it.
Thank you so much, John. That has been John Rasik. He's a soil enthusiast. He has been giving us insights on understanding our soil profiles, what is underneath our soil surfaces, and the urge for people to want to know and understand exactly what is beneath our feet. This has been the evening farm drive. I'll be taking a short breather, but do continue watching Farmers Media. We'll be back shortly after this break.
Soil pans are special formations that can vary extremely in their properties, and the possibility to eliminate their adverse effects on land use and management also varies according to their characteristics. And to know which is which, we gave them different names, such as plow pan, clay pan, dempsey pan, hard pan, fragipan, iron pan, ferrite, calcite, etc., etc., etc. If unattended, they can have devastating effects on your crops and income because they can severely restrict vertical movement of water, roots, microorganisms, gas exchanges, heat transfer, and so on. Pans are produced by different mechanisms over different periods, but they will not disappear by themselves unless we do something to get rid of them. And what should we do? Well, I suggest don't spend any money before then you dig soil pits and find out what's hiding below your feet. And why is that? Because soil pits don't lie. They will tell you on the spot if your land, your soils have one or more of those nasty layers, and importantly, where they are. If they do,
What kind of layers? How thick? How deep? How nasty are such layers? Can they be altered or eliminated with the current technology? And if they can, how long it will take to do it? How much it will cost? What will be the outcome of the alteration? And importantly, will such layers reoccur in time? That's what soil pits will tell you on the spot. Soil pits can help you to make right choices and right treatments for the right soils, because wrong treatments can make soils worse than they were before treatments. Now, I have a question for you. Did you ever dig a soil pit to see what's below your feet?
One of the many videos that have been done by John Rasik, the expert we interviewed in today's edition of Farm Drive. And I want to end today's show by a quote by John Rasik himself that says, "Do not treat soils like that. Tending to our soils reciprocates to our actions. If we husbandry our soils, it will provide our food, shelter, and surround us with joy and beauty. If we abuse the soil, it will collapse and die. Take humanity with it, and we will always have a choice." That has been the evening farm drive. What a way to end the week and enter into a weekend. Very rejuvenated and happy and humbled to have hosted John Rasik. And keep the comments coming. We will be sampling some of them in the upcoming shows, and let us hear from you. What is your take on what is beneath our grounds? I've been your host, Jackie Moore. I'll be seeing you next week, Monday. Goodbye for now.
How many souls are there in the world? Who knows? Who knows? Let me be more specific. How many souls are on your land? Answer is the same. Nobody knows unless you dig soil pits and find out. But why? Because a soil starts from the surface down and not from the surface up. And you don't know what is below the surface or below your feet unless you dig, observe, and measure it. If you didn't measure it, you don't know the best way to manage it, because your actions, your decisions, your choices are based on guesswork and speculations, but not on observations and measurements. The same applies to a global land mass, which is being managed by people who don't fully understand what they're managing or how their management affects entire planet, because they don't know what's below their feet. The consequence of lacking soil information leads to inadequate land uses and various forms of degradation, be it on a farm or state level or a global scale. When this happens, there is no simple, cheap, or easy way to reverse it. But the thing is, there is no lack of knowledge, experience, or know-how. No, there's plenty of it. But there is a lack of willingness to obtain that soil information and then put it into practice. And that's the problem, which also applies to those 23,000 hectares of irrigation failure that could be easily prevented if they were willing to invest in soil knowledge before pre-designing stage. But they didn't, because such a beautiful flat land cannot be bad. But guess what? More than 56% of that beautiful land is now beyond economical repair. That means about 68 million US dollars down the drain. And the undo button doesn't exist. But accordingly, don't judge a book by its cover or soil by its surface, because you don't know what's written in a book unless you read it, or what's below the surface unless you dig and measure it. And soil surface can be very deceiving. If a soil survey is expensive, land degradation and the project failure because of no soil survey is much more expensive. What do you think?